going to call the meeting of the Brockton Zoning Board of Appeals to order for the month of November 2023. The board that will be sitting tonight to hear the cases is Member Stephen Leanis, Member Monique Screen-Berry, Member Fire Chief Brian Nardelli, Member James Sweeney, myself, Chair Kenneth Galligan, and our alternate member is Jamie Hodges, who will be sitting in on one case tonight. Before we get started, I would ask anybody in the room that has an electronic device, telephone, whatever, if you would put it on vibrate, silence, shut it off, whatever. And if you need to use the cell phone, I would appreciate it if you take your conversation out in the hall. I will advise you this meeting is being televised. It is on Brockton Cable TV. It's live, and it will be repeated from time to time throughout the month. Prior to the start of tonight's hearing, is there anyone here that would like to withdraw any case prior to the hearing?
Mr. Chairman, 24 Intervale. 24 Intervale is a matter that we're going to withdraw.
Okay, withdraw. Is there anyone else that wants to withdraw prior to the start of the meeting? All right, if you're here tonight for case number 2350, the petition of Industry Lounge LLC, 24 Intervale Street, Brockton, Mass., for a special permitted use seeking relief from section 2728, subsection 3 and subsection A to operate a restaurant, bar, and a barber shop in a mixed-use structure with parking within 250 feet of a structure in a C1 zone located at 24 Intervale Street. That case will not be heard. It has been withdrawn. If it comes back before the board, it will be re-advertised. On tonight's meeting, when I call the case, the petitioner will come up to the podium, introduce yourself, give your name and address to the clerk, and present your petition. At the conclusion of your petition, I will ask if the board members have any questions on the testimony that they just heard. Once that is completed, I will then open it up for public discussion. I will ask for anyone that wants to speak in favor first. If there is anyone that wants to speak in favor, this is the opportunity. Then I will ask if there is anyone that wants to speak in opposition. I will ask then if there are any elected officials that want to be heard on the issue. And lastly, I'll ask if there is anyone that has any questions relative to the testimony that was given. And that will be from the general public. At that point, I will close the public hearing, and I will open it up to deliberations among the board members. At this point, the discussion will be just among the board members. The public discussion will be closed. You will probably hear one board member make a motion to grant. If the motion to grant is seconded, I will ask the clerk to call the roll. You will then hear each member vote either in favor or against. In order for a petition to pass, if all 5 members vote in the affirmative, the petition will be granted. If the vote is 4 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the petition will be granted. Anything less than that, the petition will be denied. So if the vote happens to be 3 in favor, 2 in opposition, the petition will be denied. At the end of the hearing, I will announce whether or not the petition has been granted or denied. All right, board members, you all set? Everybody's good? All right, the first case tonight is 2348. It's in regard to petition 22-101, relative to 117-119 North Main Street. The petitioner is seeking a 6-month extension of a previously granted variance.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board, we are asking for a 6-month extension due to the changes in the financing climate, as I'm sure you're aware. It's imperative that we get the extension to allow us to proceed with the development.
Okay, very good. Board members, any questions?
Yeah, I guess my only question would be, are we waiting for interest rates to go down? Is that what we're waiting on?
No, it just makes the financing package more challenging.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there any member of the public that wants to be heard on the 6-month extension? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the board members.
Motion to grant.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to grant. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Lanus,
Yes.
Chief Nadelli,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Ms. Greenberry,
yes,
Chair Galligan.
Yes.
Chair, that's 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
The vote is 5 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The 6-month extension is granted.
Thank the board.
The next petition is 23-49, the petition of Daniel and Donald Irving, 404 Moraine Street, Brockton, Mass. For a variance, seeking relief from Section 27-25 to continue the use as a two-family in an R1C zone located at 404 Moraine Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Attorney Philip Nasrallah representing Daniel and Donald Irving, who are the owners of 404 Moraine Street. The purpose of this evening's hearing is for the board to make a declaration that that property is a residential two-family use, and it exists as a non-conforming use. And it has existed and for such a period of time, well over 80 years. A little background of the property. The property was built prior to the enactment of zoning in the city of Brockton. It was built in 1899. It's 125 years old. And it had always been, it was initially constructed as a two-family. If anybody takes a visual look at it, you'll see 2 floors, but more importantly, if you open up the front door, they immediately are met by a set of stairs going to a 2nd floor, unlike a single family that has a stairwell in the middle of the house going up to the bedrooms. This was clearly constructed to be, upon entrance, the residents of the 2nd floor go up that stairwell and the rest go, and the 1st floor members go into the 1st floor. It also has 2 sets of access and egress, commensurate with a two-family. It has 2 sets of furnaces, 2 sets of electrical. All the utilities are separated in 2 separate sets, all, again, commensurate with what a two-family looks like. In 1967, as you may know, 68, we had introduced zoning in the city of Brockton, at which time we had everything divided up into different sections, what was R1C, R1, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look at the composition of Moraine Street and go down that street, you'll see houses of all different sizes, shapes, and colors, which was a mix of different types of homes to serve the type of a community that we had from 1899 through the following decades, whether they were laborers, blue-collar shoe factory workers. They all lived in multifamily homes. This is no different than a lot of other areas. In the 60s, when we had the introduction of the Campanelli homes, which were buying swaths of land and building homes similar in size, similar in look, we started the zoning to segregate those areas so everybody knew that they could build in those areas. But these, which were the pre-existing non-conforming uses, are what still exist today and have continued as such. Now, this particular evening, I don't take issue with the building department, not this evening at least, about their classification, because they only went by the documentation they had in front of them, and which was basically nil, because in 1967, 1968, the homeowners didn't go down and re-register their property or get that classification. And so the building department, in an earlier determination, states that our records only show that there was 1 family listed there. Well, naturally, the owner of that property didn't list who the tenant may be upstairs. That wasn't part of the homeowner relationship. It could be a different tenant every 6 months or every year. So he listed his name. I believe the important and salient view and interpretation comes from the assessor's department, even though we all know the building department controls as to the designation of property. But it's the assessors who views the property on a regular basis, sends out the tax bills, examines sometimes the interior and always the exterior, and assesses it for taxes. And for the last 60 years, it's been assessing it as a two-family, been taxing it as a two-family, and the owner of the property has been paying it as a two-family, which opens up the dark window is if this were to be declared a single-family, where does the property owner go to get his money back after all these years? Because unlike an abatement, where we disagree over the value of the assessment, we don't disagree over the nature or character of the house. In this instance, we don't disagree with the assessment, we disagree as to what the characterization is of the house. And I suggest, and unlike an abatement, you only have a short-term window by which you can go and raise your appeal. Here, the appeal starts once the city makes the declaration that, oh no, by the way, thank you for your money for the last 70 years, but it's a single family. And he's been paying for two-family all those years. So as a matter of equity, fair play, and considering the consequential hardship that the property owner has to incur by having paid all that money all these years and not getting what he was paid for, this board has the opportunity to correct it. And unfortunately, Brockton, unlike a lot of other communities, wherein departments talk to each other, not necessarily verbally, but by way of their records, electronically, the tax department, the building department, and the assessor's office can within seconds determine if we're all on the same page with classifications as to what that property is. Here in Brockton, you could have the tax department saying one thing, the building department and the assessors all having a different view and characterization of the property. So you're separated by all these islands, which leaves that property owner, and most of them who are lay people don't know, by the way, when you go into a city hall, you have to go to the building department because the assessor who you've been paying all those years could be wrong, and he won't control. He's inferior to the building department. It's not a fair, equitable system, and because of that, I'm here this evening on behalf of Donald Irving and Daniel Irving to try to ask this board to rectify that and grant them the relief we are seeking by way of the variance because of the consequential hardship that will be caused by having this use over the last 60 years changed or not honored as a pre-existing non-conforming use. So with that, I again respectfully submit that request to this board that they make the determination it is a pre-existing non-conforming use because of the continued use going back before memory. And if there are any questions on those issues, I'll be happy to respond.
You
Mr. Chair.
summarize in a few words the hardship.
Well, the hardship's the financial hardship that they've been incurring the cost and expense of the use of that home, which is now challenged by what the building department states it may be. So whether it is or it isn't, the equitable relief would be to grant it two-family use because, again, it is a pre-existing non-conforming use, which I don't really agree that a hardship would have to be shown when I'm arguing pre-existing non-conforming use. It was entered into under the bigger umbrella of a variance, but I believe it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, and we ask the board to accept that and identify and agree with it. Is that what it is? But if we wanted to look strictly what a hardship is, it's the monumental and monstrous cost that these people have paid over the years, believing they had something that they've been told of recent vintage it is not.
Very good, thank you. Board members, any questions?
And one more thing, Mr. Chairman. I did quite a bit of due diligence. I went to the National Grid, the utilities, to see if I could find if there were other names on the second floor. Their records don't go back that long. We went to voter registration, went to the DPW to see if they, two sets of trash. I couldn't get records that go back that far, but I try to reach out as far as I could everywhere. But I think, again, the salient feature is the way this has been used over that term of years.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair. So utilities, are there two boxes for electrical service on the building?
They're separate boxes.
Separate boxes, okay,
Yes.
and everything's split, everything's,
It always has been, and there's two separate furnaces, one for the second floor, one for the first.
okay, thank you.
Was there any inclination at the Registry of Deeds?
No, that would just show a legal description of the property.
That's
but-
all it did. There was nothing indicated at all. The other thing I had to, so there's two sets of electric utilities, but in a two-family, you would actually have three. You'd have the owner's panel that would do the common areas, and then you would have a meter for each occupancy. But there were only two.
Well, that's what I saw on the photo. There may be three. I didn't go in there. I had told her separate units to identify second floor and first floor that, and there may be an owner's panel to cover that. That I'm unsure of.
I would think if this is determined to be a two-family, that some upgrades may have to be done on this house, which may include that.
Yeah, and they're willing to bring that all up to code. I don't have any problem with that, and I endorse that.
Any other questions from board members? Everybody's good? I'll close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the hearing. Is there any elected official who wants to be heard on the issue? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that has a question relative to the testimony that's been given? Seeing none, I will close that. That closes the public discussion on the issue. I will now open it up for board member deliberation. Board members.
Seeing how it's been designed as a two-family, I would just want to stipulate that utilities and electrical be separate. Otherwise, I don't have a problem with it.
No, I agree. I think, too, when you drive down that street, an interesting thing you see in houses very similar to the one we're discussing this evening, there are actually two addresses on the front of the home, like it is a two-family. So I don't think it goes against the norm of the neighborhood and would stand out either. So, but I would agree with Mr. Sweeney and anything that needs to be upgraded, obviously, but that's beyond us.
Well, ironically, back in the 1960s, that house was owned by a firefighter named Wallace Woodward. Wally Woodward worked at the West Side Station. I had been in that house in the 60s, and I believe it was a two-family then, in the 60s, when I was in it. So that's true that it has been used as a two-family for many, many years, so.
Motion grant.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to grant. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Landis.
Yes.
Chief Nardelli.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Ms. Greenberry.
Yes.
Chief Galligan.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, there's 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
Vote is 5 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The petition is granted.
Thank you, members.
I'm talking, I hate that. He's your ever salesperson. That was awesome. Did you hear?
Petition 2350 of 24 Intervale Street has been withdrawn. If anybody came into the meeting late, if you're here for that 24 Intervale Street, it has been withdrawn. It will not be heard tonight. All right, the next petition is 2351, and I am going to step aside, and the chief is going to step in, and our alternate is going to step in.
Yeah, just grab this one. No, just roll it over, because so she can see too. I should have just got up. Yes, thanks. I love mine down there.
Good evening. Quick change. The next case that we will hear is case 23-51, petition of Douglas A. King, 115 Main Street, Suite 1D, Northeastern Mass, for a variance seeking relief from Section 27-10, Table 2, Section 27-32, and Section 27-57, seeking to renovate an existing structure into a two-unit apartment building and construct an 8-unit residential apartment building on a single lot with parking and lacking setbacks required by Section 27-57 in a C5 zone located at number 48 North Pearl Street. Mr. Burke?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the Zoning Board, with your permission, my name is Jim Burke. I'm an attorney at law with offices at 48 North Pearl Street. I'm here representing Douglas King. Doug is the owner of that property, purchased it roughly 2 years ago. We're here with Bill Buckley, and Bill Buckley is with the Bay Colony Group, and he's going to provide you with some schematics. If I may, this application came before the Zoning Board of Appeals previously on a request to allow a conversion of the existing offices at 48 North Pearl Street, which for the last many years has been my offices, into a 2-unit residential apartment, and then construct in the rear a separate apartment building. That apartment building, when it first came to the Zoning Board of Appeals, was a 10-unit building. It has since subsequently been reduced. The project now is in a C5 zone, and it's requesting an 8-unit residential apartment building along with the conversion of the existing former residential structure that sits on North Pearl Street. Mr. King, as you can see from the zoning brief that I prepared, is an experienced developer in eastern Massachusetts who has developed about 1,500 properties throughout areas with this entire region, down into Situate, Mansfield, Quincy. He has constructed single-family homes, condominiums, apartments, medical facilities, commercial structures, and is extremely experienced and has an excellent reputation. He's received numerous awards, including the Massachusetts Historical Society. What he seeks today is to allow you to provide him with the ability to do the conversion of the property, maintain the same facade of the structure that currently sits in the vista on North Pearl Street, and to build in the setbacks a 8-unit building that has been reduced in size based on some of the suggestions that we received from the Zoning Board of Appeals previously. As a result of the denial, we went to the Planning Board. The Planning Board granted authority for Mr. King to again proceed to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we are here now. If I may, the property is somewhat unique. It is a narrow structure. It is somewhat of a deep lot. It is a C5 zone, and as a result of a C5 zone, its general permitted uses are uses that are not consistent with the existing structure that was built in 1900. The structure still has value, certainly, but it is a unique structure that does not blend itself well in the current economies of what we know, at least for professional offices, to be consistent with the conversion of residential homes into dental, insurance, legal, medical offices. That day has passed. You have very little interest in that. You have an inability really to build the medical offices that are allowed there, and surprisingly, one of the few things that would go there would be a tattoo parlor. How that ever got in the C5 zone, but that's one of the uses that in fact is allowed. When we were here before, we received some excellent suggestions in terms of critiques of the structure that was being proposed, as well as the renovation and the layout of the property. There was also substantial opposition that was heard from two members of the community from Brockton Heights, on North Pearl Street. I'm pleased to say that as a result of that, Mr. King was able to engage in substantial dialogue with Councilor Farwell, who represents the community as a councilor at large, as well as some of the principals that were concerned about the development. As a result of the input that they have provided, he substantially modified the proposal that is now before you. And as you can see from Mr. Morris's letter that we included as part of the application, there is substantial support for this project going forward as an intelligent, practical, and attractive reuse of that facility to blend into the Brockton Heights community. It is, I believe, an excellent option, an excellent suggestion, and I believe, as Mr. Morris in his letter cites, he suggests that please for the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant the relief that is asked. Based on the suggestions of Mr. Morris and also the fire chief, who is very helpful, what we tended to do was reduce the density of the building and as a result also create a concrete access on the left-hand side of the structure to the rear, which would allow equipment from the Brockton Fire Department to gain ready access to treat the structure if in fact it needed to. Also, as was brought up, by the utilization of and creation of that fire structure, an access way, temporary as it is, you could also bring equipment in to treat the neighboring medical facility, which is next door. Also, as a result of suggestions that were presented at the board on that evening, you now have dedicated space in front of the building, which allows for EMTs and public safety individuals to get rapid access to the structure without dealing with parking that would affect it. As a result of more suggestions and the reduction of the density, we now have excess parking in excess of what is allowed to allow for potential guest parking. There are 20 spots that are required. There are 24 now that are presented. There was an increase of 2 parking spots that were garnered as a result of the suggestions of members of the board. There was a substantial amount of landscaping that went into the project. Much of that discussion was with Mr. Morris. You have 10 linden trees that border the cemetery side of the property. You have 6 linden trees that border the medical complex side of the property. And also, as part of the request for relief of the somewhat unusual section of our zoning ordinance, it says you can't build a driveway within 10 feet of a medical complex. I don't see how that really applies here, because this building is nowhere near the parking area. Its entrance is totally on the other side, and all you have is green space. But nonetheless, what Mr. King has sought to do in order to compensate for that, he's building a substantial brick wall structure on that side, as you can see, plus with an ornamental fence at the top. So there will be a distinctive separation between the proposed resident or anyone else that's there. So the net effect is that you have a substantially revamped and very positive, I think, attempt at providing you a first-class structure that will be built with Mr. King's expertise and experience. We've identified that it, by the intention of the developer, will be somewhat similar to the project that he has in Rainham. We provided you with some color renderings that basically show the style. Of course, what you'll see from the street, you'll see the vista of an entirely renovated 19th century residential structure. That's what you will see. You will have virtually no visibility of the new structure based on the depth of the lot, because of the uniqueness of the size of the lot, its narrowness, that impacts its ability to successfully be redeveloped into a use that's allowed in a C5 zone, and the depth of the structure going back. roughly, there's just a little less than 40,000 square feet from the lot, so it is much deeper and with more density than you think because of the length of the size of the lot. When you appear before a zoning board of appeals, you always need to hit the hurdle in a case like this of whether or not you're entitled to a variance. Well, a variance under 40A relates to circumstances related to the size, shape, topography, and soil conditions that uniquely affect the property and not the zoning district as a whole, that creates a hardship, financial or otherwise. Also, the uniqueness relates to the structure too, as well as the soil conditions and the shape and the topography. I've identified the narrowness of the shape, which affects its utilization and conversion into a C5 use. In addition, what you have relating to the soil conditions is twofold. First, as some of the residents who may be from that area are aware, when the medical complex was being built, it roughly for a period of 2 or 3 weeks was hammering granite, and I don't know if it was blasting granite, but substantial granite was discovered and had to be dealt with on that site. Well, the granite they found from the supervisor that we talked to, and Mr. King talked to, was right up to the property line at 48 North Pearl Street. One would assume that there is some granite there. Well, we hired Briggs. You see their report, it's there. Experienced engineers who did testing and found 2 substantially unique things. One, there is the existence of granite, and granite and ledge have been identified clearly in our case law as a hardship, which relates to soil conditions, what a board can consider in granting a variance. But also there was the existence of glacial till, which means you had soil that was unsatisfactory for the development of any project that went before it. So as a result, this glacial till needs to be removed from site and substance of clear, good, usable fill brought in, all of which directly relates under the statute for circumstances related to the size, the shape, topography, and soil condition of this property, which creates a hardship because of the economic impact of all of those things, as well as the inability to successfully utilize the structure as a use that's allowed in a C5 zone. I suggest virtually any use that you would practically bring for this specific property would require a variance of something. So what we have here is an excellent proposal that I think will blend substantially well in the community, which allows you and hopefully a positive vote to grant the variance in question. I'm going to ask Mr. Buckley, Bill Buckley, to come up and basically do a run-through, if you would, of the changes that he dealt with in terms of the first presentation of the 10 unit, as well as the current. If you want to go ahead and identify the landscaping, the changes and specifics that I identified.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Bill Buckley from Bay Colony Group, and I think Mr. Burke just did my job for me. But I'm going to, I'll just quickly go over some of the modifications or some of the highlights of the project. So I think you can see the rendering here. It gives a good layout of it. But one of the issues which we were talking about prior was traffic circulation. So what we've done here, this is now a one-way circulation. If you're looking at the drawing, you look at the upper one, the northern drawing.
It's upside down, if you want to just flip it over real quick. Thank you.
That would be, if you look at the top, which is the northern part, there's 2 driveways on here, and we've made the top one a one-way, and you'd drive into the rear and then come out around the other side, so it would be a counterclockwise motion. And that's the exit area is almost exactly where the existing driveway is located. Mr. Burke just touched on the landscaping. I don't think we need to go into detail on that. as he talked about, the emergency access on the left side. So again, if you're looking at the building, as you're looking at it on this plan down below, you can see we don't want to create a 24-foot paved area that was going to be used infrequently, hopefully. So what we've done is we've set it so that there's two lanes, or two lanes for truck tires or vehicle tires, so they can go in the back there. So we're minimizing the amount of impervious on the site. And as you pointed out, if you're looking at the drawing again, on the cemetery side, there's already a nice stone wall there. And what Mr. King is proposing is the construction of a landscape. It's not just a fence or anything, it's actually a brick wall. And I think a detail of it is on sheet 5.2 of the plan set that you have. We gave you a picture of it that shows what it would look like. And that's going to go along the bottom and the rear of the lot as you're looking at it, so the bottom and the left side, and it will tie into the existing wall there. I'll just touch about some of the utilities. I mean, the site is on municipal sewer and water, as you would expect. But one of the things we're doing is we're making sure that we don't create an issue as far as stormwater with any of our neighbors. So all of the runoff from the site pitches to the back already as it is. It's very, very a gentle strip. It's only about a 3-foot drop in a little over 300 feet. But be that as may, we have to capture that runoff. And what we're doing is we built a underground drain system under the parking lot, which is the parking lot between the two buildings. So there'll be zero runoff from the site. And all of it will be infiltrated on the property. The lighting, we've made sure that the lighting is not going to be an issue. So the light posts are no more than 10 foot high. Those are the ones that would be lighting the driveway and lighting the parking area. They're 10 feet high. They're LED lights and they're dark sky compliant. So yeah, if you were standing across the street, you can see that there's a light on, but it's not throwing any light off of the property. And that's actually one of the plans we gave you, again, is sheet LT-1, which is the lighting drawing. And I think that is it. If there's any questions.
All set. Any questions from the board members?
What are the square footage of the units?
Square footage of the
Square footage of the units.
units. How big are the units?
750 square feet. So they're all one bedroom, the 8 units. The gym
Once you
present
get-
office out front
Doug.
is around 1,100. Oh, sorry. The back building are 8 one-bedrooms, 750 square feet. The front building are 2 two-units, around 1,000 to 1,100.
Okay.
All the buildings have their own entrance too. And then in the 8 unit, there's a common way out from the second floor for the second egress.
Okay, thank you.
Can you get in, if you were to come in through where the parking spots is on the back unit, can you get to the other side, or will you have to take the walkway to get to the back?
Say it again now?
So in the back unit here, can you get to the unit in the back by going through the building, or you would have to walk all the way around?
We didn't get that.
Okay. So you have to walk the pathway to get to the units in the back? Okay.
And that's just landscaping back there.
Okay. So is there only one exit in and out for each unit?
One way in, one way out.
But for the units themselves, is there only one way in, one way out for each unit? Like you don't have like a back way, or if there's a fire? Okay.
So this is separate stairway on the second floor for emergency for a stairway for 4 units to come out.
Okay.
The second egress.
On the second, okay.
And this is the concrete here and here with grasses between it, with the 5 on it,
Okay.
that would get back to here, which would help this building as well. And we were going to put a gate here, so if this building had a problem, the fire entrance to the common. For like break the gate again, but they'll allow it.
Anyone else? Real quick, Mr. Burke or Mr. King, I'd like to stipulate, if we could, that, and I don't know, you may already have this in the plans, that you talked about the depth of the lot and the inability to see the other building. There should be some sort of delineation out front. That, is this going to be a single address with two buildings or two different addresses? Like, is it going to be an A and a B building of number 24, or is it going to be, or do we know that yet?
That's so far above my pay grade.
So what's the question?
He wants to know whether or not it's going to be two separate addresses or an A building and B building.
I think the post office determines that.
Yes. Well, I didn't know if you had checked with them yet on any of this. So I guess my point being to this is we'd obviously need to delineate that out on the front, however that is in the end, and work that with the building commissioner.
Yeah, I have a feeling it'd be one mail area.
Understood.
Yeah.
One other thing real quick, just discussing with the building superintendent, Mr. Plouffe here. There was a newly enacted city ordinance that any fences or walls over 6 feet would have to have a special permit. So I think to do our due diligence here, we'd need to add a special permit onto this as well for the wall that you're going to build that's about 8 feet on the southern portion of the property, as long as you're not opposed to that.
I think there'd be 6 feet in height.
6 feet. So how it says, it's showing on your plan that the wall is about 8 feet in height.
Do it only 6 feet.
No, it'd be less than 6 feet, then there's iron in between. They're like pillars.
Okay. But it's a fence though, correct?
It's like a fence, but
Yeah,
It's
so
ornamental.
it's ornamental.
it's on what?
There's bricks, 2 brick pillars, and then there's a footing with brick up at 2 feet, and then the,
I think it's not meant to be a fence, but more ornamental,
and then you
Chief.
can see through it.
Yeah. But in the end, it is a fence, correct? And like, this is something we're just, yeah. So I think we're going to have to add into this just a special permit. We can take care of that here. But I think it's something that we need to address because of the newly enacted city ordinance. Just so you're aware, when you see it,
Thank you.
at the end of this, we're all on the same page. You're like, wait a minute, we didn't apply for a special permit. But I think that's something we need to do here tonight.
Okay.
As long as you guys, I just want to make sure you're aware. Better to
That's
do it
fine.
now, correct? Okay. Any more questions?
One thing to add, Mr. Buckley mentioned, yes, we did in fact engage a traffic study with McMahon Associates. And they basically provided, and you have it with you, a finding that the development would have a de minimis, basically a negligible impact on existing traffic commission. And as a result, we've now reduced it by 2 units. So there is even less impact than de minimis. I'm not sure how it gets there, but that's what the basic impact is, that they won't have any impact on the already challenging, because North Pearl Street's challenging. It's just that the amount of traffic from this project will not have any significant impact on that. So I believe that essentially brings us to the end of the discussion. I have laid out for the board, hopefully, findings that it could adopt if it were to choose to grant the relief. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Did we have any further questions, board members? Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. I'd like to open it to anyone who would like to speak in favor of the project.
Let me just add, I'm sorry, but Councilor Farwell has been a strong supporter of the property from day one, and he's involved in a real estate committee hearing. I'm sure he'd be happy to allow me to relate to the board that he strongly supports its approval.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burke. I'll close that. Anyone that would like to speak against or oppose the project? Seeing none, I'll close that portion. I'd like to see if there's anyone who would like, any public official that would like to speak for the project. Seeing none, I would like to see if there's any public official, elected official that would like to speak against the project. Seeing none, anyone that would like to speak and make any comment at all on the project? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion and open it up to discussion against the board, for the board members.
I think I've seen this project about 4 times, but it's also subject to site plan review. So I don't really have any other issues or concerns.
I'm happy with the suggestions that we made last time, and it seems like everything that we asked for, they addressed.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion to grant, and there is a second. Sir, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Hodges,
Yes.
Mr. Lanus,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Ms. Greenberry,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nadelli.
Yes.
Mr. Vice Chair, there is 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
Reports that there are 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. The variance and special permit are granted. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank the board for its time.
Thank you.
If you need a hand with anything, if you need a hand or anything, if you need a hand. Yep. What's his name on it? What's his name on it?
All right, the next petition is 23-52, the petition of Hyacinth Realty Associates LLC, 1109 Montello Street, Brockton, Mass., for a variance seeking relief from Article 4, Section 27-29, and Article 3, Section 27-10, and Article 3, Section 37-18. Residential not allowed in a commercial zone, relief from size of parking spaces, and number of spaces required, requesting 87 residential units in a C2 zone located at 15 East Market Street, 29 East Market Street, 1144 Main Street, and 1109 Montello Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Attorney Jake Creedon. With me is land surveyor engineer Scott Farrier. Also with me is the architectural engineer, Mark Dooley. The family that owns the property, the Everett Murray and his wife and son, Markle, are also here. I'd like to direct your attention first for a moment to the actual purpose of our zoning book and situation, because I think as I try to suggest what the hardships are at the end of my discussion, I'd like you to keep in mind the purpose for which zoning situations are applied. And right in the first situation, it says, the purpose of the chapter declared by the promotion of public health, safety, convenience, morals, and welfare by encouraging the most appropriate use of the land. I can tell you that the location of this property, it finds itself in between Montello Street and Main Street. East Market Street runs from west to east. We are proposing that we, as the chairman had indicated, 87 units, and we have parking for all 87 units. Actually, we have 94 parking units. However, there will be commercial uses in there in each of the 3 buildings that we're proposing. I think Mark Dooley has plenty of renderings, and you'll be able to see where those locations and how they are. Certainly the uses that are going to be in those retail uses, if this is granted, to be determined. It's a C2 zone. It basically, I don't have to tell you that Main Street is commercial on Main Street all the way down on the Main Street side. On the side of the Montello Street, we do have immediately abutting this property heading to Keith Park, several multifamily situations. So there is residential down at that other end. I can tell you that because we own both sides of the street, it is a private way. We will be changing the road itself, and that is to discourage, if you will, truck traffic, which gets back to safety and other things ultimately in my discussion and argument with you. Right now, the business in there, and it's been in there for many years with the Murray family, is basically a moving business. I would liken it very much to storage of warehousing. They are overstuffed buildings that present, in my opinion, potentially a safety hazard. So Everett is willing, and his wife are willing to move that business to put in this residential request, which obviously is needed, I think, in the Brockton area. We have lighting and parking that is a bit of a situation. As I indicated, we have enough parking spaces for every unit in the building. We do not have the size of those spaces to be the 180 square foot each parking space. In fact, they are slightly less for at least 35 of the vehicles. I can then again tell you that because there were only, I think, 6 in the 2 buildings that will house units, there are only 6 units that would be 3-bedroom, which means people with large families that need Tahoes and Escalades and those situations will not be likely renting in that property. Mark will tell you and show you the units basically are going to be mostly 2-bedroom units. There'll be quite a few single units, and again, I said there will be at least 6 in the 2 buildings, which are very similar, 3-bedroom situations. The fire safety issues, in my opinion, again, I suggest to you, at either end of both Main Street and Montello, there are hydrants. The building will be fully sprinklered. There'll be no truck trafficking, so to speak, down there, because we're going to, and Scott will explain this to you, change the road so that it's going to be curved, which will discourage any use of traffic coming across and making a shortcut out of that like could happen now. I might suggest that the road is in such bad shape right now that not many people do that because the trucks park right in the middle of the street for the most part. There is also great improvement that's going to be for runoff for storm management. Scott will again tell you about that situation. Right now, there is no green space in that location. We are proposing 10% is required. We are going to propose 11 point something, so brand new green space in that whole area. We did have 2 neighborhood meetings. As a result of that, I would suggest they were very positive meetings. There was a couple of people, they may be here, they may not, that were concerned. They had a couple of issues. Mostly, I think, one of the issues was, why don't we have a playground in there? There isn't enough room, of course, for a playground. It's a rather tight location, and that's that situation. We would have to remove our own snow from the building, but Mr. Everett and his wife and Markle have done that in all their other properties, and they own quite a few properties. They've been around in the city of Brockton for years. These structures, which are part of the hardship, are almost 100 years old. Again, they are kind of boxes as far as the way I look at it. If something were to happen there, it would affect a great commercial area, which is very old and tired, and the residential situation on Montello Street. We did a traffic study, and I'll give you the conclusion. Basically said at the end that there is no substantial impact either to the volume or the delay that would be caused by the 87 units. Again, the parking situation has smaller, compact, but not by much. I can tell you that all the projects that we have done in the area, all of the spaces in those places have been reduced, the parking spaces, to accommodate, again, compact situations. We have a good, I believe, traffic flow coming one way from Main Street down to Montello. Scott will tell you we have 2 entrances and exit basically that do not interfere with the one-way street, one from Montello for people that live in the units and one from Main Street. Scott, do you want to tell us about the storm management, and the road itself is the most important, I think.
Good evening.
Take the microphone. Just grab the microphone.
What do you want? Oh, sure.
Thank you. So we've been working on the property for a couple of years now, and when the Murrays first came to us to look at developing the property, we came up with a few sketches, but we've had a lot of meetings with the planning department, with Deputy Chief Williams to look at the roadway, neighborhood meetings. We've met with the ward councilor on a few occasions, and the biggest issue certainly with the planning department that we found was the issue of the access from Main Street to Montello Street and how we could try to limit the amount of through traffic in that area. As we said, right now it's commercial on either side of East Market Street. Really the only traffic on East Market Street are people that are trying to avoid the lights at Perkins Ave, either on Montello or Main Street. People use East Market Street as a cut through to avoid those lights. So a big part of our discussions with planning, with Deputy Chief Williams, was to try to eliminate that cut through. It's a relatively short road. It's only about 300 feet long. It isn't as wide as our typical roadways in Brockton, so we're really limited as to what we could do. But again, in meeting with the planning department, what we came up with was a little bit of a bend in the road, just so looking from Main Street, you wouldn't see a straight shot all the way to Montello Street. In addition to that, we've proposed a series of trees on either side of the road that will essentially visually close in the roadway. Also some large planters, lights, and bollards, all of which will kind of make it look more of a driveway than a roadway. Hopefully that helps discourage any kind of through traffic. The couple of other big items that we feel that we have on this project, as Attorney Creedon said, right now the entire property is 100% impervious. There is no green space. As we know, green space downtown in the Campello section is a big issue with all the talk and studies of heat islands and the lack of green space. We're proposing, as you can see, a substantial amount of green space around the perimeter of the project, about 12% green space, and we're also providing street trees along East Market Street to try to help that out. The other environmental issue that a lot of these areas have, there is no stormwater management at all to handle the runoff. As part of our redevelopment project, we do have subsurface underground infiltration systems that will handle the runoff in accordance with DEP's regulations and also the City of Brockton stormwater regulations. So it's a vast improvement both in green space and in drainage. All other utilities are available on Main and Montello Street. Plenty of sewer, water, electric, and gas. As far as access into the buildings, there's Podium parking, basically surface parking on each side. There'll be an entrance and exit off of Montello Street for each building into the garage, and there are also entrances off of East Market Street. So if somebody was to come in from Main Street, there'll be an entrance into each garage off of East Market Street. As Attorney Creedon said, the spaces are 8 by 18, the compact spaces that we seem to always have in these podium parking situations, mainly because of the spacing of the columns in the structural component of the building. So that's why we keep seeing these variance requests on these type of buildings. As I said, we've tried to take into all the city officials' comments, and I think we feel like we've done a pretty good job on the plan.
We have sidewalks on both sides, which is a safety
Yep.
situation. Also, we've spent a lot of time on what amenities can be back to the city and to the people that are in the units that want to live there. And just a few would be, we intend to have a laundromat in there, we intend to have a gymnasium, we intend to have community rooms. We are also greatly, as Scott indicated, improving from zero the storm management runoff situation. We also, safety-wise, and I think both police and fire, underground electric system, no poles and things of that nature. It is a gated community only as to the garage, so that the public will not be able to get into the parking, into the garage situation, and almost every vehicle but a few would be in the garage. Isn't that correct, Scott? Yeah, okay. Again, the parking variance for compact cars is not that much less than what would be a standard vehicle. I would want, I think, Mark, just to show, if you would, what would you like? What is it? You could show the height of the building. The height of the building in that zone obviously is not to exceed 60 feet. We only go up, I think, to the top floor of the 4th floor, which are both buildings, and it's only 48 feet. So there's no height problem. Yeah, you can go around there with it. Okay.
Are you interested in the architecture?
Sure. Yes.
Well, my name's Mark Dooling. I'm an architect. And when we design a building, we're very keen on having that building fit into the neighborhood. And I'm kind of new to Brockton, but I've gotten to know the Campello neighborhood a bit. There's a very good deli right near the corner of the site here. And there are two remarkable buildings at that intersection, right? There's the 1890-ish, very, very tall building. I'm told there's a gym on the top floor. Is that correct?
Oh,
Do you know about that?
I don't know if it's still there.
But there was a gym there.
A boxing gym.
Right, exactly. And then there's the other building with the good deli in it, but they're both about 1890 vintage. They're brick. They're elegant brick. They need some work, and we would like to recall some of that in our new building for the Murrays. So here, you can see this, right? Yes. You can see that this building, as it meets Main Street, and as it meets Montello at the other end, there's a brick facades here and here, again recalling those very nice existing brick facades from the last century or so ago. The rest of the building would have a different kind of finish. And as far as the architecture is concerned here, one thing we are very keen on, and we're doing a lot in our multifamily work these days, is the passive house design. Have you heard that one? Passive house. It's a construction methodology that uses insulation differently. There's more insulation than is typical, and there's more of it on the roof, on the walls, and in our case,
where we have parking on the first floor, so the ceiling of the first floor has a lot of insulation. And the mechanical systems in the building, we work with a company called Zaid up in Quincy. And they have they provide a separate air circulation system, which is separate from the heating and cooling. And it's done in a fashion where the cost of heating and cooling is about 15% of the typical cost of heating and cooling for your unit. And that's a combination of insulation used in a creative way and a very good MEP system, mechanical, electrical, plumbing system. Jake, you wanted to say?
Well, that's what I wanted them to know, that it's also a very modern energy-saving situation, so as far as the units go, they won't be very difficult to sell. I can't tell you what the unit cost would be because they're different size units, but it's a very modern situation that I think all of the unit residents will be very pleased about with all those other amenities. There was, again, I wanted to get back and give the hardship situation, reminding the board that I'd read the purpose of the board situation to be one that basically does the highest and best use of property. I don't think there's anybody in this room that would say the highest and best use of the property at this time is the warehousing moving business. And if you've been down there, again, I'll repeat, it could be a serious tinder block in the future. It's just not a good situation. We also, because it will be eliminating basically trucks from coming through there, that's a huge safety situation for people that are in residence. All the building itself, the codes and the electric and the underground situation will make it, I think, a safer situation because everything will have to be up to code. The structures that are existing now are so old that at any point I would think they would become a burden to the city. So I think clearly the highest and best use compatible with other residential situations that we're now doing under the Housing Act that's been passed perfectly fits into this situation. Brockton needs it. It's a great improvement of a very tired area. It's part of Rob May's South Campello plan, if any of you have seen that. It fits in, and he's been very much in favor with us and been all those meetings with us. So basically that's I think the hardship between all of the things that are safety and betterments code-wise. I think this is the highest and best use of that property. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Board members.
Mr. Chair, if I may, you do have commercial space, or is it retail as indicated on the plans?
There will be retail space in all three buildings. The A building, the B building, those are the two residential unit buildings. The C building will just be where the laundromat, the gymnasium, and those other things will be. And Mark has I think, a nice rendering of that he'll show you.
The storefront on Main Street that exists will remain.
Okay, so I guess, what I'm alluding to is, what are you providing for parking in those spaces?
Yeah, well, we do have a little bit of a surplus with the housing unit situation, but because it faces Main Street, we're thinking that the on-street parking there, like anything, depending upon what the landlord, the owners propose to be the use in there, you can restrict. Owners do not want a headache in parking, so whatever use they put in those retail things, my guess and my experience has been that they will have user-friendly things for the people that live in the units. Maybe a cleaners, no offense, but that type of situation.
Yeah.
So here's the Main Street end of the building down here, right? And one of the larger brick buildings is here. The other one is up here. So this is retail, this light orange color is all retail, and coming back a little bit. And we don't know what that's going to be. You know, it's retail. I don't know. But it is, it contributes to the life of the street, and we're very keen on that. There's retail going towards downtown. We want that to continue and be part of our development here.
It seems like a sizable space. Is it consistent with what's around it in terms of storefront and the usage of the street?
What is shown here is larger. But of course, the Realtor is going to say, to your point, that if it's a barber shop, it's going to be 1/4 this size, and it'll be divvied up by the forces of the economy.
Okay, thank you.
Is that retail just one level?
It is.
Okay.
It's housing above it.
So to get to the apartments or the units, you're going to have to go down, East Market Street to get to them. So if someone had Uber or DoorDash, where would they pull in?
Sure.
To,
Let me just move this.
just wondering
yep.
how that would work with
Yep.
that street already being so narrow.
Right, so
All the time. Instacart.
all right, so on East Market Street, we do have a delivery space proposed between the trees. So there will be a space both for delivery trucks and drop-offs of that sort. So there will, and there are front doors to the buildings for people that do walk to the train station just a quarter mile down the road. There will be front doors to each of the buildings. So they wouldn't have to enter through the garage. They would be able to use those front doors.
Right. Okay, thank you.
We'd also propose benches for the residents. You know, there's a lot of things that only through site plan review and planning board can you fine-tune some of those things. But, you know, this is a very tired area, and this is, I suggest to you, a real aesthetic improvement for Campello and the citizens of Brockton. Taxes, I'm sure, will be much more with a building like this than what Mr. Murray pays. And I think that's, again, a lot of effort has been put into this, a lot of meetings, a lot of changes to make it work. And I think the biggest slight problem is obviously that parking situation. But I did go by one of the one of the high-rises, and there's so many empty spaces that even in our high-rises here, a lot of people don't have cars. Elderly people are used to getting public transportation or transportation that's private.
Jake alluded to a laundromat. There's a building owned by the Murrays abutting our site. It's part of our site. It's on Perkins Street. Here it is in gray. And our notation refers to it as Building C, 2 stories, a laundromat, small office space, a gym and community room on the 2nd floor. It's a 2-story building, existing, ready for rehab, as part of all of this.
So these are going to be sold as condos, correct?
No.
No? I heard the word condo being mentioned.
I heard sale, but...
I heard condo.
Did you say condo?
I don't think I said, no, they're apartments.
You can rewind. Anyways, when these do go, I'm sure the demand is high, they will be rented out. Whatever retail you have in there, it's probably going to be busy. Have you considered any sub-parking for this, considering? The street and the neighborhood is already at a bind.
But we are very aware of the parking over here diagonally opposite our site. How many spots are in that public lot? Do you know?
On South Street, there's a public parking lot.
How far away is it?
It's half a block.
Yeah, 500 feet down the road.
Okay.
Is there an agreement, and I don't mean to, is there any agreement between that lot and this property?
Not that I'm aware of. Just public, it's public assessed.
Okay.
It's public parking.
I don't think parking's allowed after midnight in that parking lot.
I didn't think so
Everybody
either,
has to
okay.
be out of there.
So we really can't rely on that, is that?
Well, I would have,
Wouldn't be anything open after probably 9 o'clock.
So have you thought about sub-parking?
as in parking at the MBTA lot?
No, as in underneath the building.
Yes, we did think about that in an earlier scheme at great length and at great cost. We had a different plan entirely with not 2 major buildings, but 4 buildings. We priced it out with Callahan over here, one of your neighboring communities. He said, forget it. You can't do affordable housing of any sort with underground parking. It's just not workable. The cost is through the roof.
Reduce the units from a higher number that we had down to 87 to try to accommodate the parking situation.
And what was the layout of the parking? Was it the total footprint, or was it a certain footprint?
It was.
How much of it was parking?
Yeah, it was, follow me carefully here. It was about this much of the property.
Roughly an eighth of the project?
About, about an eighth was underground parking.
And that was the astronomical number you got?
That contributed to a very high number by virtue of it being underground, by virtue of there being 4 buildings, 4 envelopes, separate with some underground parking. It didn't work financially.
Units in each of those buildings. So that's why we had to reduce it.
This is much simpler. The plan that I don't have here tonight is the roof plan. So this building and this building obviously have a roof. There's a roof plan, and most of the roof is covered with solar panels, and a good part of it, about a third, is green. It's additional green to what you see on Scott's plan.
Who would maintain that green?
That would be Everett Murray.
So we have a property manager.
Okay.
I did not clear that with Everett, but
If I could just ask real quick, just the point about the traffic concerns me in the study that you had, because I can drive down Main Street at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 p.m. at night, and there's traffic there. So that's, I don't know where that traffic plan came from, but that's deeply concerning, because that's not, from what the traffic plan you have says, and the boots on the ground and what you see for traffic there is night and day. So that's a concerning part with me. Mr. Faria, you've put a jog in East Main Street now. You have your simulation for fire apparatus, and that worked fine. Okay. One of my biggest concerns, and this would be something obviously for tech review, and I'm sure Deputy Chief Williams brought this up prior. We have an approximate 100-year-old water main that runs on East Main Street. The fragility of that water main is drastic, because that was one of the main superstructures that brings water into the city of Brockton. It is a 30-inch main. Are there plans, will there be plans, to make sure that that is not interrupted? Because that being interrupted in any way during construction with pylons, drilling, anything to that effect would affect me massively.
as maybe it's not clearly evident, East Market Street hasn't moved.
But there'll be drastic construction on either side of it that will cause great vibration to a 100-year-old water main, sir. That is my concern.
Nor is there any construction going over it or on it. There is to the side of it. And your point is well made.
Okay.
I hear that. In fact, we had earlier plans that had buildings going over. And we discarded those when I found out from a gentleman here at City Hall up here in the rafters about this plan, about this piping.
I've had conversations about this project especially with Commissioner Hill, who I'm sure you're probably speaking of, and he has those same concerns. It's a headache for him. It is a public safety concern for me.
Sure.
So that's just one of my more main objectives.
If we get further down the road into the site plan process, that's certainly something we'll have to investigate and get structural engineers involved to look into the stability of that pipe and make sure it's not compromised at all during our construction.
The city is laid out in a grid system, like I'm sure everybody knows, and those 3 mains that come from Silver Lake.
Right.
That's one of our largest ones, and it goes smack dab in the middle of your project.
Sure, understood.
That's all I have.
I guess, sorry, Mr. Chair.
I just want to reinforce that on that main that he's talking about, that's a 36-inch cast cement main. It's not ductile iron. It is one of those mains that you want to stay away from. And as the chief mentioned, if that should rupture or fail, it would have a very drastic effect on the water pressure in the city.
Catastrophic.
Yeah, so I think it's very important that it comes out, that everybody is aware of the fact that that main is one of the key mains bringing water into the system, and it's going right down the middle of East Market Street. And it's a cement pipe, it's not a steel or iron pipe. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I just want to add on back to the parking. Is it even possible to get a certain percentage of maybe upper-level parking at some point? Instead of going underground, maybe another small section of, I don't know, 10 spaces for the retail? Is that a possible reconfiguration?
It's an engineering decision, Mr. Sweeney. I can't.
Would it be less cost, would it be more cost efficient? I mean, if you're not digging it out? More cost to go up? Thanks.
What's happening in other projects here in town? Are you,
They're not quite like this. This is a little bit different.
they're all different, but how about the parking ratio? How are they, what's happening at these?
Do you want me to answer that? I think you know what it is. We've downgraded the parking limits.
Yes. 1 and 1. Our problem is that the retail space is requiring, for 9,000 square feet that we have now, 225 square feet per parking space, which amounts to, like 41 or 2 spaces. But again, we would have to use Main Street, we would have to use that other parking lot probably, or eliminate retail.
The simple answer is that there's going to be some shared parking. There's some parking available on our site that you're going to be living there, you leave in the morning, so there'll be some spaces available that aren't within the garages. So there'll be some parking available within our property itself. I mean, the rest of it is just the same problem that any existing business on Main Street has. There's only a limited amount of parking on Main Street. If there isn't a parking space, you go to the next shop.
Would you be at a one-on-one ratio with this?
We have for the housing units, but would be 1 point something with the...
We have 7 extra spaces, is what it comes down to. We have 1 space per, there's 84 units.
94 parking spaces.
87 units, 94 spaces. So we have 1 space per unit, 7 extra.
Are they designated? Do they have numbers? Or is it find a spot?
No, they're not designated.
I think that the spaces in the garage would be designated. I think, like all of these projects, most of the spaces are rented. It's an extra into the project, as you know, so I think the spaces would be numbered. Again, as we all know, all of these projects downtown, the garages, the spaces aren't being used. So, we don't think there's a chance that we're going to need more spaces for the residential, for the uses. And as far as the retail goes, it's, unfortunately, it's Main Street. There just isn't a lot of parking on Main Street for any of the businesses, whether they're existing or both.
So I'm just looking at this because I think it's going to be successful. That's why I'm concerned, and I think greater parties are concerned about the parking issue.
We've had great concerns about it, and the only solution as this proposal goes, is the shared parking situation where people leave to go to work and the retail space is open, you come in, you can park right in front of it. So if we designate units, those spaces would be the ones that would be kind of undesignated, if you will, so that retail could come in and out of there.
I live in Newtonville, and I got a haircut 2 weeks ago. And I remember I drove down by my office in Newtonville. At first I went to the barber shop, and I found a spot on the street. I always find a spot. And usually I'm riding a bicycle, but today I was driving. I think I found a spot.
Well, this project's in Brockton, and it's in a very, you know, it's in a much different area, so.
It is, it is.
When you want a haircut, what do
All
you
right, let's get away from haircuts and let's get back to the situation at hand here. One of the things I want to mention on parking, first of all, I think we all need to realize that the designated size of the parking spaces is 180 square feet. That's what's in the zoning. You are asking for 128 square feet.
Yep.
That is a sizable reduction. And I think in the testimony we heard it was a slight reduction. That is sizable. So the full size, which are 9 by 19, are 171. But when you look at the plan, the vast majority of all the parking in this building is 128 square feet. So if I make them 128 square feet,
is,
I can
it is.
squeeze an awful lot of
35
cars
of them,
in this building. So if they were 180 square feet, as they should be, you wouldn't get half the parking that you're designated in the building right now. So that's my comment relative to parking within the garage. Parking outside of the garage. You can go down in Campello at mostly any time during the day, and on the east side of Main Street, from Garfield Street north all the way to East Market Street, every parking space is filled. The south side of Main Street, from Market Street south, is full. Perkins Avenue, from Main Street to Montello Street on the south side, is full. Currently, Market Street on the south side is full from Main Street to Rutland Square. There is no parking allowed on the north side of Market Street. So where I'm going with this is the availability of on-street parking right now, particularly during the day, is a challenge right now in Campello. If at night anybody could not get in that garage, there is virtually no place to park down there. Main Street and Perkins Avenue and Montello Street are all regulated, at least from December 1st to April 1st, no on-street parking after midnight. So everybody has to be off the street at midnight. So the availability of on-street parking for any overflow, so as to speak, that may be needed for this building is really, really limited. This building, I presume, is going to sit on a plot where all of the buildings that are on this plot are going to be demolished. Everything's coming down.
Yep.
When I looked at the traffic that would be coming out of this garage onto Montello Street, the building sits right on the edge of the sidewalk. In order to get visibility coming out of that garage, looking north to see if there's any cars coming south, the front end of your car has to be out beyond the curbstone on Montello Street. And I'll tell you right now, if somebody's got a green light heading south of Montello Street, they're going 30, 35 miles an hour. So to get out of that garage is going to be a challenge. If somebody on Perkins Avenue has a green light and suddenly makes a right turn as you're trying to pull out of that garage, you can get hung up right across Montello Street. What I would rather see is a building that sits back from the sidewalk so that as you pull out of that building, at least you're going to have a sight line for traffic that you're going to see on Montello Street. So I see that as a problem, trying to get in and out of that garage from Montello Street.
The only point I would have on that, Mr. Chairman, is there's an existing building that sits right on the property at the corner. So even if we set our building back, you're still going to have to get your nose out to see beyond the building at 21 Perkins. That corner building is not ours and is not coming down. This building right here.
But
So
the
that's going to obstruct your site visit, your site your sight distance down the road.
The sight distance from the corner of the building that will remain to the doorway that's coming out of your garage would allow you to pull your car out over the sidewalk and still see up Montello Street. Right now, you've got to pull way out of that garage in order to see. That's only my personal opinion. The second thing is, as you pull out of that garage, if somebody is going by on that sidewalk, you will not see a pedestrian until you are across that sidewalk. So the problem with setting these buildings right on the property line as an exit or entrance to a garage, these are some of the things that I'm noticing around the city. The other question I had is the width of this East Market Street. I don't see anything on any plans here that tell us how wide that street's going to be.
It's 18 feet.
18 feet wide.
Yes.
A one-way street.
One-way street. So if anybody, for any reason, parks on that street, the street is shut down. If somebody stops to pick somebody up in a wheelchair or whatever, and they stop, there's no way anybody can get around that person.
Realistically, 18 feet is enough to get a second car through if you had to.
Okay, I'm only making an observation that normally we require those passageways to be a minimum of 24 feet.
For two-way traffic.
For two-way traffic, but that's also, in this case, if somebody stops and wants to go by. This is nothing more than a glorified driveway, is what it is. We have a section of the zoning that says that the main entrance to this building shall be on the main street. That's in our zoning. And right now, this entrance is on the, almost like an alleyway, which is East Market Street, correct? Secondly, the second means of egress out of this building is a stairway on the Montello Street side that puts you right in the garage. It does not let you go outside. You have to exit into the garage. So if there's an emergency, if there's a car on fire or whatever in the garage, you have to exit out of that door into a hazardous atmosphere. You don't go right out into the street. So I have very strong concerns about the disruption of parking that currently exists for all the businesses that are currently down on Main Street. I read somewhere here that visitor parking for this building could be accomplished by parking on Market Street. There is no room for visitor parking on Market Street. There is no parking on Montello Street. There is never any parking available on Perkins Avenue. So I guess during the daytime, if I was to go there, I probably could use that public lot that's on South Street. But my point is, in order to determine the number of parking places to fit the project, the size of the parking places has been diminished considerably in order to show that there is sufficient parking, when in fact, if we even go something under 180, which we have done in some other places, but we've never gone down to this number, I don't see how anybody could pull their car into a parking space and ever open the door to get out of their car. The trees that are showing on this property, a lot of these trees are on public lands, correct? They're on sidewalks. The ones on Montello Street, the ones on Main Street are on public ways.
Right, street trees.
All right. The building at 9 Perkins Avenue, that's the current brick building.
Correct.
That appears to be apartments over retail on the first floor. I believe right now in the alleyway behind 1114 Main Street, you can enter the parking space for 9 Perkins Avenue from that alleyway to a paved parking lot in the back. On this chart here, it looks like that's gone. How would these people ever get to their parking lot from 9 Perkins Avenue?
The parking lot behind 9 Perkins Ave, we have shown right here, they would get access through East Market Street through our parking lot to gain access to it. They don't own, nor is there a legal right to use that alleyway. The alleyway is on the corner building. It's on 1114, owned by 1114. I'm sure there's been a long-standing agreement to allow them to use it, but there is no legal easement, right-of-way, whatever you'd want to call it, for the 9 Perkins Ave people to use that property. So we're providing them a right-of-way off of East Market Street to get to their parking lot.
So to get to their parking, they would have to go into your parking garage in order to get into their parking spaces.
They would go right, they would go under the building.
And that parking under the building is secured parking. You have to have a pass or whatever to get in. Is there a gate? How is that controlled?
Inside the garage, if you can just step aside.
They'd have a parking.
Right in this area here, Mr. Chairman, just to look at it, that would be where the gate would be. So you would enter here, they would be able to get straight into their parking lot that exists. Our people would take a right-hand turn through a gate to get into the garage.
I thought you said earlier in your testimony that the garage spaces under these two buildings were going to be secured. They're going to be gated.
It would be in that location right there, the gate would be.
But the gate would control the parking that's on Perkins Avenue.
No, but, again,
If I get on Montello Street, can I drive right in this parking garage underneath these buildings?
nope, there's a gate on the two entrances on Montello and the two entrances on East Market Street.
All right, so the point I want to make is if I live at 9 Montello Street, I got to drive in East Market Street,
Yes.
go into your parking garage, and then go into my parking space that I currently have.
Exactly.
My question was, if there's a gate on your parking space,
The gate would be right here, Mr. Chairman.
okay, all right, now I understand it. Okay. All right, so my concern, and I think you have addressed it, that parking is going to be a huge issue here, and there is not much room for parking in any of the surrounding area of this building, and we haven't even addressed the retail areas out front. And according to your chart, that retail area is going to require 42 spaces, and we don't even come close to that. So anyway, just to end my comments, and you've answered my questions, but my comment is that parking right now on street during the day and early evening is maxed out. And to introduce what I'm concerned about is an overflow for this building. And to say that most people are going to walk to the train station, I think, is disingenuous. I still firmly believe that there's going to be at least one car per bedroom. And if you've got a 3-bedroom unit in there, most likely everybody that lives there is going to have a car. There's 3 cars. So in zoning, that needs to be addressed, and somewhere down the road it probably will be formally addressed, but I think right now the zoning board has the ability to make some discretionary decisions about whether or not there is sufficient parking. And that's how I'm looking at it. Thank you.
Chief, I would not to disagree with you, in fact, I agree with you totally in the situation, but it's interesting that Mr. Murray's trucks, the big trucks, can get out onto Montello. There hasn't been any accidents that we know about. It's a slow process, but all those big huge trucks do get out there. Some take a left, some take a right.
That's true, and I will say that if I worked in that warehouse and I was driving a truck and I was going into that street every day, I would be very, very familiar with that corner. And what I'm saying is we're going to introduce a lot of new people to a very busy street. That was my comment. Thank you. Board members, any other questions? Everybody's good at this point? Okay, I have answered my questions. I'll close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ron Bethany. I'm the president of the Campbell Business Association. I've been living in that building over there, Carriola Shoe Building, excuse me, for 39 years. And Chief, you're right, Mr. Chairman. You can't park in Campbell mainly because there's 1-hour parking signs on both sides of the street from Cape Cod Cafe all the way to Market Street. All those people park there all day long. You've come to my place, you couldn't even find a parking spot. So my suggestion would be you got to get Tommy Williams, another guy or another lady, and a PJ to get down in Campbell and start tagging all these cars that are there all day long. They can use the South Street parking lot all day long until, like you say, till midnight. No trucks are allowed in there. And it's not fair. I see people coming to my store. I can't even get to the post office. I had to park in the South Street parking lot to go to the post office to mail a box. So here's an elderly lady carrying a heavy box over. It's not fair. So 1 hour parking should be mandatory. You need to get down there. I know you're on the Traffic Commission, and I wanted you to come as a guest speaker for the Capital Business Association, but I'm sure you're busy and I didn't want to bother you. I'm all in favor of the Murrays because I hope they can figure out a way to find their parking solution, whatever their problems are, because I think it's a great thing that we're going to have more people living in Campello, more people eating in the Italian kitchen, more people going to Cape Cod Cafe, more people going M&M Seafood. All these businesses depend on people. Years ago, I forget the guy's name, across in the auto repair shop, Henriken House, Leo Henriken House. You know the one I'm talking about, the gray house, the big multi-unit. Anyway, that was residential. Now it's commercial. As far as residential going in a commercial area, they're going to develop all Lynch's property with all that. That's all commercial, but it's going to end up being residential. So I think we have a great opportunity here here we have the Murray family that are willing to develop this property. And if there's any way we can help them by telling them what they need to do, tell them what they have to do, more parking, maybe get rid of one of the buildings and make it a big parking lot or whatever. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm really in favor of them developing that neighborhood. So that's all I got to say.
Hey, thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak in favor? Seeing none, I will ask, is there anyone here that wants to speak in opposition? Please give your name and address to the clerk.
I'm Veronica Stevens, 32 Green Place, Brockton, Mass. Actually, most of what you guys have already addressed is on my list, so I appreciate it. You're doing your job. Thank you. As a matter of fact, one of the things I was writing down was North Pearl Street is a great example of what you guys are doing. They've been back here several times. I've watched it over the video, and they got it because they listened to you. This isn't a project that can't be done. It's a project that needs a lot of guidance. The pipe underneath it is one thing, I don't even know how you address it to protect it, but it's got to be done. As we build Brockton better, and I think we are, we need to consider what we're putting residences into. Not that we can't put it in a commercial zone, but we need to make the standards residential quality. Quality of life is what we need, not shoeboxes with no parking, no place to play. I think you're doing it, and I appreciate it. And I think this can be done with less apartments, but it's got to be done right. And I thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the hearing. Is there any elected official that wants to be heard on the issue? Please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Susan Nicastro. I live at 90 Samuel Avenue, and I represent Ward 4 on the City Council, and this project is in Ward 4. And there's so much that's right about this project. I love the idea of redeveloping this area. I've been to numerous meetings with the owners of the property, the Murrays, and their consultants who are here this evening, and they are all aware of my concerns. There's so much that's right, but I'm really concerned about the lack of parking because there is not a supermarket in walking distance. There may be a laundromat, or there may not be. I don't know about a dry cleaner. And what I'm saying is, for quality of life, people need certain things. This isn't in the downtown area, and I note with interest that we've already added 1,000 units or nearly 1,000 units in the downtown area, and yet we still don't have a laundromat, a pharmacy, and some of these other things that are a supermarket necessary to live in areas like this. So I think that you're going to live there and you're going to need a car. And I think with 2 bedrooms, with 3 bedrooms, you're going to need a car because there's going to be more than one driver there. it's not close enough to the MBTA lot to say, after we build it, we can piggyback off that and cut a deal to park cars there. It's 3 or 4 blocks from there. I want redevelopment in Campello. I want this to work, but I just think realistically, as some of you have said, as other people have said, there's already little to no parking in Campello during the daytime. And at night, within a block of this site, there are 2 restaurants that have 2 a.m. liquor licenses, and they're staying open late. There are several others a little bit further down the street. Parking is tight in this area. This is the city, parking is tight. And to the extent that they can address that, I think that they should. I'm not sure it's enough to say, oh, it's too expensive to go underground. I'd like to see that explored some more. So, as I say, I support the idea. I support the efforts of the people who own the property. But at this time, I have this huge reservation. Because right now, when I go to the Campello post office in the middle of the day, there's nowhere for me to park. I have to go into the Walgreens and cross my fingers. They don't care that I'm a city councilor. So those are my thoughts. I'm happy to talk to anyone about it. I'd like to see this work, but I just think it needs more work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other elected official wants to be heard on the issue? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone that has any questions relative to the testimony that has been given tonight? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the hearing. That finishes and concludes the public discussion. I will now open it up for discussion among the board members. Board members.
I think we've picked this apart a lot, but I do think it's a great project. It would need site plan review, site plan approval. I think if we stipulate at least a 1-to-1 ratio with the units, they could probably go back a little bit to the drawing board and work in some more commercial parking. Those are my thoughts. I also think, as a member of the Traffic Commission, we definitely need to enforce the parking, the 1-hour parking, so on South Main Street. So I don't know how anybody else feels.
Yeah, I like the idea of the project, but I think the parking does need a lot of work. I mean, I would like to see them come back with another plan, that will address all that, but do you have any suggestions for?
Well, they do have to see planning, so they know what our issue is. I think if we keep it at a 1-to-1 ratio, unit to parking, they could build in some space. It might require downsizing the units.
Well, what about for the commercial? I mean,
That's what I mean.
So 1-to-1 for residential?
They could take units away.
And the other issue too is the size of the parking spots too. Like the chair mentioned, most cars in there wouldn't be able to open up their doors.
Yeah, it does have its concerns. I would like to see it go forward.
I think to the councilor's point, the concern of there not being a grocery store right there, I think that really does shine a light on the amount of people that will have vehicles there. So that speaks to it, just not outside of the commercial component of it. You know what I mean?
Well, the other thing that we don't know tonight is what's going to go in there for that commercial occupancy. We don't know if it's something going to be passive where there's very few little foot traffic, or could it be something that, like a sub shop, where people are coming and double parking on Main Street or whatever. When I look at the plan that's before us, and I think we got to concern ourselves with voting on the plan that's before us. I don't think it's our position tonight to try to massage this plan. But when you say if it goes to planning and they can do something else with parking, I honestly don't see, even if it went to planning with this layout, what planning could do to create more parking. It would have to require another plan. And if we just arbitrarily say that we would allow them a use variance to allow residential use on a C2 property, now everything is left to the planning department, and we lose control at that point as to some of the things we may have talked about tonight, that if we saw it on a finished plan, we would be making an informed decision. Personally, I'm not in a position to make an overall yes on a plan that needs massaging. And from what I heard tonight, I think everybody is talking about the lack of parking, and I don't see how parking on that site can be improved with the parcels that they own. If there were more parcels as part of this that could create more off-street parking, I think that would be an alternative. But for what they have shown us tonight and the size of the parking places, they're not convincing me that the average size vehicle is going to fit in that size parking space. We didn't hear anything about rubbish removal. Is there going to be a dumpster on the site? What do they do with the rubbish? They say that if it snows, they're going to take the snow off-site. Well, if we get 3 inches of snow, do they take it off-site, or is it because we get a foot of snow that they take it off-site? We don't even know if the petitioners that are before us tonight are going to be the actual owners of this building when it's done. So these owners tonight and the representative can tell us that certain things are going to happen, but if this is turned around and sold, who knows what the next owners of the property are going to do. That's why I think we need to have a solid plan before us. Speaking for myself, I want a solid plan before me, and the plan that I see tonight, for me, doesn't work.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded to approve. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Lanus.
No.
Chief Nardilli.
No.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Ms. Greenberry.
No.
Chair Galligan.
No.
Mr. Chair, that's 1 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative.
The vote is 1 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. The petition is denied. That is the final case before us tonight. There is no other business before us. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
We are adjourned.